Additional. Let me now turn to the theme that I've been asked to speak about today. And that is for the world to respect Africa. Now, the first thing that I want to underline is that respect is never a given. It cannot be purchased. It must be earned. And it is earned based not on rhetoric or request, but based on action. Concrete action. Consistent action over time. Saudi Arabia has oil, as does Nigeria. Kuwait has oil, as does Nigeria. Qatar has abundant gas, as does Nigeria and other countries. Yet Nigeria is the country with the largest share of its population living below extreme poverty line in 2023 in Africa. That is not a gold medal that we should be proud about. Clearly, there is something fundamentally wrong in our management, or rather mismanagement of our natural resources. It is also clear that if we continue to mismanage these natural resources, we will remain stuck. I have urged African governments to stop securing loans backed by their natural resources. And that's because those natural resource-backed loans are not transparent. They're expensive. They make debt resolution very, very difficult. If that trend continues, it will be a disaster for Africa. If we manage our natural resources well, Africa has no reason to be poor. We have $6.2 trillion of natural resources. So how in the world are we poor? We simply need to pull up our socks, stamp our corruption, and manage our natural resources in the interest of our countries and in the interest of our people. And let me say, the resources of a country does not belong in the pockets of powerful and rich individuals. It belongs for the state to be used for the benefit of the people of that country. There must be accountability on our natural resources. I wonder sometimes when people go around and say, well, I've actually helped, we put a borehole in a state, or pull a borehole and it's on national television. The very fact that you're actually installing boreholes is an indication of government failure. Because in 21st century, every single house must be having pipe-borne water. So there's nothing to be really delightful about in trying to do that. And we should get away from this feeling of leaders feeling that they are doing public good. No. Leaders must be held accountable for the resources of the people.
Yes, guys, SLPP, APC, you must accountable to public funds, okay? Guys, this is Sierra Leone, Freetown, capital city. Look at this.
Like many developing countries, there is a strong belief in Sierra Leone that the solution to our dire poverty comes from abroad. And so from healthcare to education, down to governing ourselves, we depend on external aid for everything and are failing to build capable institutions to manage our economy and our welfare. In this documentary, we ask, what are our state-owned enterprises and parastatals doing with the trillions of leones they receive for the welfare of Sierra Leoneans? We ask this question because before we head off to the IMF and the World Bank for funds to buy books and drugs for us, it is useful to know why our state enterprises and parastatals fail to create wealth, jobs, and services, and how to stop that failure. We know that government is currently reviewing the state-owned enterprises law, and so we dip in that debate. But first, let us look at state-owned enterprises and parastatals at a glance.
The Road Transport Corporation, which has received over 350 buses from both SLPP and APC over the last 20 years, has never replenished its fleets using its own resources, even though we pay millions of leones in.
So we just get a pinch of salt, apply it on the snail. We get our test tube here.
My name is Emma Nalima. I'm co-founder of MST Junior School, that stands for Math, Science and Technology. My unique item is matoke, banana. Every child in our school from grade 3 is given a banana plant to look after. While they're doing that, they apply and study concepts of mathematics and science. And if every African get such a unique education like from MST Junior School, Africa will not only be a better place, but it will be the best place to live in. So MST School is a unique school. We get the theory out of class and make it practical. So learners go to class for content. From class, they go to the laboratory for experiments. From the laboratory, they go to the farm to implement what they've studied. Here, they apply all aspects of maths and science. Waste management is key, where we play with the life cycle of a housefly, maggots that are fed to the chickens, and earthworms to the fish. From the farm, they go to the kitchen for home economics, where they learn how to make nutritious meals like sandwiches for their break tea. They go to the bank after selling their harvest.
Oh, what's your name?
My name is Morenji Patience from MSC Junior School.
What have you come to do?
I've come to bank our money. I learned saving from school because we do farming at school, like growing bananas. So after harvesting bunches, the money that we get from it, we come and we bank.
So it teaches them to be responsible, it teaches them to care, it teaches them all these other life skills that academics alone, reading books is not going to tell them. We are packaging our learners to meet the world so that when they get out of the school, they can fend for themselves.
Now, few politicians rise and fall like James Ibori. From a humble start as a cashier at a Neasden DIY store, he became a state governor in Nigeria. But for 8 years, he systematically looted and stole to fund a lifestyle of fast cars and luxury properties. Tomorrow, he'll be sentenced for fraud and money laundering worth £50 million. The trial was in London, where he deposited his stolen money, often in cash, with no questions asked. So why didn't Britain's high street banks do more to stop him? Our business correspondent Sarah Smith reports.
James Ibori, once a powerful Nigerian politician, now lives in a British jail. It's a long way from the gilded splendour he's used to. Ibori's career began in London. When he worked in the Wicks DIY store in Neasden in 1991, he was convicted of stealing from the till. A few years later, he was the elected governor of the oil-rich Delta state in Nigeria, and he was still stealing, but now it was millions of pounds. He bought luxury cars like this Bentley and properties in London, spending over £2 million on this house in Hampstead. When he was arrested, he was trying to buy a £13 million jet. Tomorrow, he will be sentenced for money laundering and fraud.
The fact that this has happened, I cannot stress how internationally significant it is, because this man was a powerful governor of Delta State, and he has now been brought to book, and it shows that no one is untouchable.
This is being hailed as a major victory for the British justice system. A corrupt foreign leader who couldn't be prosecuted in his own country finally brought to justice right here in the UK. But before we start feeling too proud of ourselves, let's take a closer look at the multiple British bank accounts James Ibori used to smuggle those stolen millions out of Nigeria. Banks like Barclays, where Ibori had at least 6 accounts, as did his sister, his wife and his mistress. Accounts they used to launder millions.
James Ibori was able to bring millions of pounds of his looted funds through British banks to buy British houses, to send his children to British schools using a British solicitor. The UK has helped to facilitate his money laundering and his corruption by allowing him to bring his assets into this country.
British banks have to identify politically exposed persons, like foreign politicians who could be a corruption risk, and identify any suspicious transactions they make. Yet, somehow, Ibori, a very politically exposed person, was able to put £1.5 million through one of his accounts in the
or ensuring efficiency of these power status.
Since 2004, the so-called privatization has merely been a scheme benefiting a few individuals in many ways. It gives fat salaries to people politically connected. Salaries of the top executives of a National Privatization Commission, state enterprises and parastatals can sometimes be 10 times higher than a senior civil servant supervising them.
They are underhand games at any time they are selling or leasing assets of state-owned enterprises.
Privatizing the Sierra Leone Produce Marketing Board (SLPP) in 2010 was a mere ploy to sell the most valuable asset belonging to the company. Once the assets were sold or leased to some business people, government went on to form a new company for exporting cocoa and coffee, using the remaining less valuable properties, mainly the stores in the interior of the country. The racket was so bad that SLPMB's warehouse at Deepwater Quay in Freetown was leased to a private cocoa and coffee exporter, while the state company went on to rent a small store in the same vicinity of the port. The racket left SLPMB as one of the least cocoa and coffee exporters in Sierra Leone.
These state-owned enterprises are a reliable source of secretly financing politics.
When these two banks collapsed in 2014, 70% of their bad debtors were either politicians, government officials, or businesses affiliated with politicians. State enterprises and parastatals fail because they operate in high corruption risk environments.
The justification for privatizing the functions of the state and the creation of parastatals is that SOEs are seen as more capable institutions than a weak and corrupt state. But what we fail to realize is that when states are weak and corrupt, that character can bleed into the very language and business of every facet of society, including the private sector and NGOs.
The fact that by 2013, Transparency International had ranked Sierra Leone as the highest in the world for bribery, and in that same year, Afrobarometer survey had put business executives second only to the police for corruption, explains why the failure of almost all state-owned enterprises and parastatals did not occur by accident. And the Sierra Leone Chamber of Commerce is largely silent even when corruption raises the risk and the cost of business operations.
Bribery by business executives for contracts is not uncommon.
So the lack of a result-based and merit-based management system is the biggest obstacle to the performance and success of state-owned enterprises and parastatals. Parastatals and state-owned enterprises are very lucrative, and that makes them an important political target for politicians and their allies.
When political compensation takes preeminence in appointment, institutions head for complete failure.
Under both SLPP